You know, it's become quite common now for F1 fans to hate on things they haven't got much experience with, like sprint races for example, or women. Anyway, there's a new addition to the list. Well, actually it's about as new as Alonso is to the sport. We've known about it for a while now, so not exactly that new. The Las Vegas Grand Prix is what I'm talking about. And to be quite honest, I completely understand why everybody gags at the very thought of it. Well, except for this guy, but realistically, even if he's fit enough to race that day, he'll probably manage to break his other hand and miss the rest of the season anyway. Never mind, that would be quite hard to do on a track with like 4 corners on it. Which brings me to the very first reason nobody on God's green earth asked for this race to happen. The track is about as complicated and technical as Bernie Ecclestone's brain. Not that complicated and quite smooth. You see, since the heavens and the earth were created, one of the greatest appeals of Formula 1 has been the iconic tracks it's raced at. Now, what's made those tracks so good all these years has been that, crazy enough, they were designed specifically with racing in mind. But you see, when you just take the street layout of a crippling addict's paradise, what you get isn't exactly going to produce world-class racing. And before some big mouth starts talking about how, oh, we have street circuits on the F1 calendar and they're not that bad, in fact sometimes they can be pretty decent. Shut up. They're in Europe and Asia, not the land of freedom. Have you ever seen a map of the US of the A? All their streets are straighter than a freaking pencil. There's like 12 turns in the entire US, most of them being on NASCAR circuits, and they, my friend, are quite literally ovals. Taking a closer look at the track layout, we see the so-called circuit has a total of 14 turns apparently. But if we look that bit closer, you realize that the track organizers, or whatever you call them, were smoking something really freaking strong. Because in what universe is that a turn? Anyway, overtakes look like they'll be a once-in-a-lifetime thing here. Okay, maybe not that bad, but still, not a whole lot of overtaking spots. It looks like all the action will be down at turn 14, turn 1, and I'm assuming the vast majority of overtakes will be using DRS on 2 of the 3 straights this circuit has to offer. Thrilling stuff, right? And I feel a strong need to yet again mention that on top of this looking like the absolute best track F1's ever seen, remember that it's also a street circuit, meaning that there's little to no runoff area for drivers like George Russell and Logan Sargent to avoid dying in. So inevitably, drivers will try and take less risks when attempting an overtake into a corner, making the potential of having a good race about as slim as my bank account. Inflation, am I right? Anyway, the track itself isn't exactly what you'd call a masterpiece, but as crazy as it sounds, that's not even the worst part of the whole Las Vegas Grand Prix. You see, what really makes the fans scream with excitement about this whole event are the prices. This race is an absolute bargain. Apparently the cheapest grandstand tickets went for around 2,000 USD without including tax. But those are just the loser tickets, obviously, because F1 and Liberty Media know that the average F1 fan, like you and I, can afford much more, right? And don't even get me started on the accommodation. But to be fair, that's out of F1's hands. But still something you'll have to take into account if you're mentally deranged enough to go. But for that loony price you pay, remember, you get to see a mediocre race, explore the paradise that is Las Vegas. No, not that one. Yeah, Las Vegas. And on top of that, maybe, now just maybe, you'll get to see DJ Khaled. You see, the issue here is quite frankly the whole event is just a blatant cash grab. Yeah, I know some genius might point out that F1 is a business at the end of the day, and you're right, but it's also a sport, and an event like this goes against everything this sport used to stand for. It's a terrible racetrack, so it promotes racing about as much as the road safety authorities. You'd have to sell an organ to put down a deposit to even dream of attending, and of course, instead of racing literally anywhere else, like for example Hockenheim, that slot is reserved for this steaming pile of But maybe we're all just being a little too harsh. Because you might know that this isn't exactly F1's first rodeo in Las Vegas. No, you see, in the early 80s, more specifically 1981 and 1982, F1 yet again had the same wonderful idea. But unlike today, however, the Las Vegas Grand Prix was held in the Caesars Palace parking lot. Yeah, that hotel from The Hangover. And it was ridiculous. Honestly, I find it freaking hilarious how they literally had a blank canvas to work with and they came up with this goofy looking thing right here. Anyway, from the viewer's perspective, however, in some ways it was pretty damn awesome. You could quite literally see every single corner on track from one grandstand. because again, the track was about as flat as the earth is, according to my mentally deranged friend. He's been working a bit too long in the coal mines, don't worry about it. But as cool as it was to see everything at a glance, that's where everything even remotely cool ends. Before I say anything, here's a quick track comparison of the new track and the Caesar's Palace one. You see, I'm no expert, but I'm not too sure the track engineers, if there were any at all, knew exactly who was going to be racing here. Because if they did know, I don't think they would have made a go-kart track for an F1 race. Because, as one would imagine, that isn't exactly ideal for racing in the slightest. On top of that, yes, there is more, it was an anti-clockwise circuit. So the driver's neck in the race was in shambles even though they were driving on the most hilarious stretch of tarmac you'll ever see. Needless to say, it was a flop of an event for 2 years consecutively. So there's no wonder why we haven't seen anything Vegas related for 40 years now. So I guess seeing modern Formula 1 cars gun it down the Las Vegas Strip full throttle at midnight under the city lights may be a bit better of a sight. And there is one silver lining to it at the end of the day. If the race does suck, I guess the best thing to do when you realize your bank account has a funny little negative symbol beside it is to head to the casino and try win back your losses. Besides, you'll never know your luck if you don't try, am I right? Anyway, that's about all I've got to say. Like and subscribe if you want to see more of whatever this is, and with that, I'll see you later. Bye bye.